let's get ready here in a second. We'll get started here in a minute. Let's have a little cafe. Okay. Okay. Mhm. Okay, let's get started here. I think we're going. Yeah, the recording is going. Okay. The presidency of the United States. Now, this is a very unique sort of thing, as I will try to explain to you that the presidency of the United States is a very difficult, thankless, awful job. Now, one of my favorite presidents was Truman. And one of the things they asked him in his administration, the buck stops here kind of thing. And one time he was meeting with General MacArthur over the Korean War, and the general says, "Mr. President, do you mind if I smoke?" And Harry Truman responds, "No, General, that's just fine. I think I've had more smoke blown in my face than any man alive." And you know, it just kind of describes his um, very frank discussions that he would have as president, because he was a very frank man. I mean, he had his flaws. Now, keep in mind, this is the guy who hid the UFOs that crashed at Roswell and started the whole Majestic 12 thing, and CIA and stuff like that. But in my opinion, he had probably, as people would say, he's had a I would say he had a very tough presidency. He had a very difficult presidency. Was he one of the best presidents? I don't know, but he had one of saying a president is good or bad depends on opinions and points of view. My thing about a president is, long and the short of it, um, do they, you know, were they successful in what they wanted to get done as president? You know, were they successful? Did they get the job done? Did they do what they had set out to do? And Truman came in at a very unusual and unique time. It was the end of World War II. He didn't even know he was vice president. He had never met Roosevelt. And when he's picked at the Democratic Convention in July of 44, Roosevelt, they handed him a card of people saying, "Who do you want to have as your vice president?" He said, "That guy's okay." And it was Truman. Roosevelt didn't even have his glasses on. And keep in mind, Roosevelt in 44 was a very sick man. He was very ill. But anyway, let's move on a little bit. Born U.S. citizen, presidential characteristics, becoming president, 25th Amendment. Natural born citizen, you got to be born here. You got to be born here. You got to be raised here. Presidential characteristics, kind of when they say, "Oh, that person's presidential," or "This person's presidential," like Obama. "Oh, he was such a fabulous speech maker. Oh, he was." Well, George Washington was kind of the person who set the presidential characteristics kind of thing. Washington was seen as a very serious man. He was very decisive. He didn't show, he under fire in the war, he was as cool as a cucumber. The process of becoming a president is very tough. Like today, it is a very long process. It's usually about a year before you actually go out and start running. Um, for example, in 2024, there's a big scandal about Joe Biden's health, and possible him dropping out in replacements. Well, they're talking about dropping him out in June and July. You can't, the process of becoming president of that election, of the election year of 2024, it's too late, pal. You've got to, it's not just, oh, we're going to switch gears and give it to this other person. And one of the other things too is you do not unseat your guy who is already holding office. That's like one of the big cardinal rules. You don't replace them, no matter how bad they are, no matter how difficult they are. You don't change horses in the middle of a horse race. And they talk about Michelle Obama, they talk about Gavin Newsom. Well, none of them have been vetted for president. And they're going to do a background check on you that is 100th, every single thing that's ever happened in your life. They're going to check you out. So, it's not something they just, wake up, 6 months ahead of time. Oh, and, what likely, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think most likely Biden is going to remain the candidate. He may pass it on to Kamala, but I don't think he's going to do that. But anyway, becoming president and 25th Amendment. Biden in his presidency, I've been saying this since 2019. The man is not in good health. He's had 2 strokes and 2 brain aneurysms, and one of them ruptured. Okay. The man is not in good health. And people, being horrified, and the media, pretending to be shocked that his health is so bad. I knew this from the start. Anybody with half an eye could have seen this, and I have 2 eyes, and pretty good ones at that. And kind of, going back to like a a a coach, or a coach of a baseball team or something like that. Let me back up here a minute. The 25th Amendment, replacing a president if he's incapacitated. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke while he was president, and his wife pretty much ran the country. That came out after he had passed. But 25th Amendment was replacing a president. There's other things. He's the head of he's the head of state. He is the chief executive. He has the power to appoint and remove cabinet members. He can grant and give pardons, receive pardons. Commander in chief, war powers, power of the National Guard, war resolution. And the big deal is that the president, like this picture I'm showing you here on the right-hand side, he is the only one authorized for the release and use of nuclear weapons. Nobody else in the American government can do that. Nobody else can authorize the release of nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. Nobody. It's the president alone. Additionally, he's the chief diplomat. He proposes and proposes treaties for ratification. Any treaties that are put out there, whether, and I mean, it's, you'll have diplomats doing it, but like a lot of treaties we've signed with Canada and Japan about fishing rights in the Pacific Ocean. Fishing rights in Canada, the fishing rights in the Alaska area for salmon and things like that. Executive agreements. Executive agreements is the president has the power of making law, but he doesn't have to have the Congress to approve it. So sort of think of it this way: as an executive order, he can put regulations on something. Like, for example, all cars in the United States must have smog certifications on, for air pollution control. Now, he doesn't have to get Congress to approve that law. He can just make that law. Chief legislator, he is the one who sets the congressional agenda. How does the president set the congressional agenda? The budget. That is the agenda of the Congress. That is their main job of, getting policy through. If a president's going to do something, Green New Deal policy or something like that, it has to be in the budget. He can't, that's the main effort. Why? Well, nothing in this world doesn't get done without money. State of the Union address, we saw one just about every year around February, March, the president does a State of the Union. And then the other thing is just proposing your budgets to Congress. He has to work very hard to get everything through. Now, keep in mind, no president gets 100% of anything they ask for. Obama didn't get 100% of everything he asked for. And and understand this, with Obama, for the first 2 years of his presidency, he had a completely sympathetic Congress. And he still had a hell of a time getting things through Congress. Saying no to certain things in legislation. Veto power. He has the power to veto a congressional bill, but the Congress can override the president with, over a presidential veto. But they've got to get 2/3 of majority in both houses. It hasn't been done. The last time I saw it done was like in the 80s when I was in high school. He is the party chief. The president is the chief of the party. Biden is in charge of the Democratic Party. He controls the party. He says who gets money, who doesn't get money. So them trying to replace him here in 2024, that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be very hard to get him out of the way. The only way he's going to go, and it's by kicking and screaming, and I'll just put it this way: you're going to have a gunfight on your hands. It's not going to be easy. His other job is to go out and raise money. Now, that's why a lot of people in 2024, in the summer of 2024, were getting really upset about Biden. Got scared. Why? Party donors are drying up. They're not giving any money. Also, the down ticket people, because as president, you're supposed to help people get, congressional seats. You're supposed to help get governors elected. You're supposed to help get senators elected. Your job is to be the super politician. Patronage. The president, once he becomes president, he has got a lot of what I call gravy jobs that he can hand out. Like what? Ambassadorships are some of the ambassadorships are kind of the tough job ambassadorships where you're going to go to trouble spots in the world. Like U.S. ambassador to Egypt is going to be a toughie. U.S. ambassador to China is a toughie. U.S. ambassador to Korea is tough. And on those ambassadorships, you're going to have a resume that warrants it. And you're going to have certain things on your resume that you are going to have to be able to do. Like what would be an example of, being ambassador to Egypt? What you have to be able to do. Well, one thing you're going to have to be able to do, I would say, now you could debate me on this, but they speak Arabic in Egypt, right? Isn't that the national language? Or Mandarin in China? Well, do you think an ambassador to Egypt or one to China, do you think an ambassador to China should know something about the language, be able to at least speak the language, ideally be fluent in reading and writing of the language? Same with Egypt, being able to read and write Arabic. What do you think? What do you think? Maybe there should be something there. Now, what do I mean by gravy jobs? Well, ambassador to Jamaica. That's not a tough job. I don't think that would be a tough job. No. I mean, you'd have to you'd have to be okay with smelling like Coppertone and Jamaican rum. Let's say you lived in and I'm not critiquing Jamaica. It's just that there's not anybody shooting guns at each other. You probably have, drug trafficking in the Caribbean from Latin America and other places, But it's not like China where you could possibly have nukes, or Israel where you could possibly have a nuclear war. Instead of that, how about ambassador to New Zealand? That isn't in a real trouble spot of the world. Not really. You know, um, it's a fairly quiet corner of the world. It's not that tough of a, wouldn't be that tough. But you have to speak New Zealand. But I think you could learn it pretty quick. It's similar to English, I think. I'm joking. They speak English in New Zealand. Patronage. So, there would be jobs. Every attorney, all federal prosecuting attorneys are, federal prosecutors are presidential appointments. You have a lot of pull there. And so you have also a lot of jobs where you appoint people. And basically, if you get one of these appointed jobs, after you leave it and go to the private sector, you're going to make gobs of money. Board of governors for the Federal Reserve Bank. After let's say you did 7 years there, there isn't a bank in this country that wouldn't put you in their, in their executive branch departments. There isn't one. Why? You worked in the board of governors. So it's a real boost to your position. So patronage, and you also have constituencies that you've got to deal with as president, as people that are going to come to you, different groups, lobbying groups, things like that. Public approval, you're always going to kind of want to, the public to approve of what you're doing. Go on Real Clear Politics, look at, Biden's approvals on, let's look at presidential approvals. Let's just kind of pause this share for a minute and we'll go to another spot here. Okay, let's see. Let's go over here. If you want to know how a president's approvals are going, okay, let's go here. Okay, State of the Union, Senate polls. Let's kind of go here. Let's look for some other polls. Biden's job approvals. Okay, here we go. Biden's job approval. How is he doing overall? Well, those are the numbers. How is Biden doing on the economy? You can go here, there's always all kinds of polls. People are always wanting to know how a president is polling, with his polling numbers. Okay. Biden's economy polls, foreign policy. How do people feel his foreign policy? Well, those aren't good. Dealing with inflation. Now, this on a president, this is a big one. This one, inflation, and the economy. Is the economy going in the right direction? Biden's numbers aren't good. This is, you're underwater. And what I tell students all the time is, with presidential public opinions, one of the things you as president keep a lookout on is what the public thinks of you. Now, here's kind of a quick little story about Harry Truman, my favorite president. He used to go out and do his own public approvals. And he would sneak out of the White House, and it wasn't to, horse around on his wife. He would sneak out of the White House and he would go to bars around DC and other places. Like he'd go to Baltimore, he'd sneak over to Baltimore and go to a bar during a longshoreman strike. And he was in this bar shooting pool and watching, he was from Missouri. So he was a Cardinals fan, and he was watching the game and having a beer with these longshoremen, talking to them about politics. And he said that was more of an accurate public opinion poll to him than reading something in the papers. And back in his days, the polls were really terrible. Are the polls good now? I would say probably in the last 10 years, people with polls are, if they agree with the poll, it's a good poll. If they don't agree with the poll, it stinks. But public approval, how are you doing in your job? That's a big one for the president. How popular are presidents? Well, this is Obama, Kennedy was way up there, Nixon, Ford, Carter was a little more popular, but near the end, you can see here. Okay, let's get a purple one. You can see here with Kennedy near the end, Johnson near the end of his administration. He wasn't very popular. Nixon, he had a lot of problems. Ford was well approved of. Jimmy Carter near his election, he wasn't that popular because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Reagan was fairly popular, but George W. Bush near the end, before Bill Clinton got in, he wasn't that popular. And so you just kind of look at things. And one of the things that happens with presidents, if you were to take this out to 2024, 2023, that type of thing, most presidents' popularity, as you get further away from their administration, the least popular they are. So, one of the things I tell people all the time is when looking at a presidential popularity, how long ago were they president? Because Nixon, okay, here's the interesting thing. Nixon, when he resigned back here, he was really low. But when you got out to, into Obama's time period, Nixon got popular. He wasn't seen as such a bad guy. And so, and one of the things I say about a lot of this is people will look back with nostalgia. Oh, those were the good old days kind of thing. Anyway, that's just kind of a quick overview of the presidency. And this is the end of Unit 1.